Guten Tag erstmal von mir oder von uns in die Runde.
Very much, and good morning also from my side. Ulrike Geisler is a colleague of mine, Bernd Stracke. They come from the B3 Institute. B3 stands for Counseling, Support and Education. We have been cooperating for a long time. We have no slides, so we have no charts on what we are going to say, but we can share experiences that we collect on the field. And this experience overlaps with what has been scientifically proven and found, but in some cases we have no correspondence with what has been found scientifically. I'm not going to use any parameters, but simply observations. We work in Saxony on a project, and I have collected a lot of experience. I have been working in a state program for more than 20 years. And I will also resort to this state program. And then we have also a counseling project on right-wing extremism. And we have supported, helped many people. So we have 3 pillars in the meantime. We have a task from the prevention officer within the framework of a project involving municipalities. It's not a project, actually. It's a process-based program. And the objective is to set up prevention councils in the region of Saxony so as to strengthen prevention locally. Another pillar we have at B3 is good violence and bad violence. And this is a very complicated theme, a very difficult topic, which is very difficult to access, but it is also important to consider. And today, I'd like to share the observations and the insights concerning a model project that was funded by the state. In this project, mayors were involved, and we observed demonstrations both in cities and in rural areas. B96 is the keyword of this project. Our approach was a systemic approach based on processes. We work with coaches and supervisors according to the situation on the field. We do not have consultants who know everything, and we consider the situation locally and what is needed locally, and then we implement the right colleagues with the right expertise. As far as reporting is concerned, we've always focused on extremism and right-wing extremism and right-wing attitudes in general. If you consider the situation more in detail, you find out that the situation is much more serious. Well, of course, there are citizens who have become older and who come from this context, but they are not the majority, because the majority is made up of people led by different motivations. Well, there are, for example, people who tend to prefer alternative medicine, exoteric practices, and so it's not a phenomenon. And all the demonstrations, especially on Mondays, well, the story of the Monday demonstration in Leipzig have led to different protests, but these are factors which may not be important any longer. Then we had the coronavirus pandemic, and now we have all these problems related to the war in Russia. And I will go back to this at the end of my presentation. What we have pointed out and what we've seen is that there are specific motivations that lead people to protest and which lead people to be right extremists. So from a social perspective, these people are satisfied with the society, but they are at risk. They have a fear of being controlled, of being determined, of having the duty to do something specifically. And so among these, in this complicated world, there is a loss of orientation. If you look at the situation now, we have an energy crisis, we have an environment crisis, we have the war, and this is extremely serious. We hear about this every day, and this complexity triggers in many people's mind fear, because they see they no longer have the possibility of being involved, of determining the situation, and they cannot impact on these factors. And what happens then? Well, there is opposition. So they oppose everything, basically. They are against everything. And this loss of consensus that we had in the 80s is completely lost. It's not a political isolation, because they are involved. They are politically interested, but not in parliament, but they reject the parties, they reject the administration, the science. In part, they also reject the church, and they also reject this consensus, basically. So they want to propose something as an antithesis. And this frustration, this disappointment that develops leads to right-wing extremism, even though a person may not be extremist-oriented, but they accept it, especially because they find they are listened to, and they are accepted among this larger group of right-wing extremists. I do not want to stress the word extremism, but I would rather use the word skepticism versus skepticism about democracy. and also in the previous programs I was involved, I know and I'm convinced that we in the future, if we want to perform a prevention, we have to reconsider the program. Well, so far, programs have always been linked to youth, to young people who will become then adults. But in rural areas especially, and this is a specific situation because many young people leave the rural areas to go to the cities, but elderly people tend to be extremely radical, and that's my thesis. Radicalization is certainly underway in rural areas. So these are people who need to be focused on. We need to focus on rural areas in particular, and we have to involve the mayors and the people who are responsible for the local territories, and we have to make sure that they get in touch with these people. In B3, we also consider the civil society there as a very important element. So it is important that the civil society who has grown up there, they may be people who work for the fire brigades, for associations, and it is very important to engage elderly people there so that they can spend their spare time among these in these associations. And in this case, you can involve them without having a specific political background, and this is a very important approach. If you can reach these people through associations or through these institutions without having a political background, you have more chances of avoiding extremism. And then the networking locally. We need networking between associations and institutions and the local society. So they do not have to compete with young people. They have to work together with elderly people and with official offices, with the police, for example, especially for the ASCOM project. We go directly to the municipalities, and we see that there is an administration which is very far away from what the population and the community is doing. And for prevention reasons, it is important to develop a communal prevention program. And to do so, you also have to include the political aspect somehow. It's not to say that the communal prevention program has to deal with radicalization. They can work also with specialists and experts so that something can be done, something more than what is being done today. The large state programs focus and caused a sort of polarization. On the one hand, we have the youth, on the other hand, we have a stronger political attitude, but they have forgotten the people in the middle, and these are the people who live locally. The following project has somehow been adapted, but I think we have to develop new models for promoting this networking. So funding should not be linked to projects, to 3-year projects, just to see how the consequences are. They should focus on processes, long-term processes that are in place and that can be controlled and so we have to leave the idea of working ad hoc only based on a specific event. It should be, prevention should be a permanent task. So again, the title of my presentation is My Problem, My Issue are Grandpas. And biography is very important, much more important among elderly people than among young people. And disappointment is something that can be pointed out among all of them. We have been cooperating with the University of Leipzig and with a foundation there to collect biographies. We ask people to tell their stories, people who may not have been the protagonists of their life and who have not been listened to. And this was published in our portal. And this is very important because, as we said, these are the people that should be addressed. So this is it as far as my practical experiences are concerned.